What's up, Internet? SB here for the Marduk Report, and today I've got the first ATX case for the channel, the Rosewill Cullinan. The Cullinan occupies this weird space between full tower and mid tower case. Given its motherboard support of larger boards like the XL ATX form factor and eATX form factor, it starts to fit in the full tower spec. Its dimensions, which are 497mm high, 216mm wide, and 475mm in depth, however, give it a much smaller stature. It's actually just larger than your average ATX tower like the NZXT S340. If you couldn't tell from the large sticker on the side panel, this case sports dark tinted tempered glass on both side panels and the front panel. They're really thick at about 5mm each and really heavy, attributing to a significant portion of this case's 11kg or 23 pounds empty weight. Unless you're doing a mostly white build or flood the interior with a lot of light, seeing inside this case while the case is on is going to be actually rather difficult. And please follow the sticker's warnings and handle these panels with care. If you've ever had to clean up a broken car window, you know how an awful experience that is. And if you haven't, trust me, it's awful. The front panel is removable and thankfully isn't attached to the top mount I/O panel. The I/O panel is a host of 4 USB ports, 2 2.0 ports and 2 3.0 ports, your standard audio layout, power, reset, and a fan speed switch. Oddly, the outer edges of the switch line up with the outer speeds, but the center nub only lines up with the center speed. The clicks thankfully are rather distinct, so even if they don't line up, changing the speed by feel alone isn't really a problem. The fan controller is connected to a fan hub on the back of the motherboard tray. It has space for up to 5 fans and is powered by a 4-pin Molex. Along the front panel that's been pulled off, there are a series of vents running down both sides that may or may not be a little reminiscent of some other case manufacturer designs. Regardless of what company they remind you of, they do a great job of letting the fans draw in cool air for the case. Speaking of fans, the Cullinan comes with 4 120mm blue LED fans pre-installed, 3 up front and 1 in the rear. The fans have been painted half black, which I suppose is to keep the light they produce shining outwards. Not really sure, but I think it looks cool. Inside the case is really spacious. Like I mentioned earlier, there's support for motherboards ranging from the ITX all the way up to eATX form factor. There's also space for dual 360mm rads, although extra thick rads shouldn't apply. Based on my measurements, doing a push-pull setup with 360mm rads won't work on either the front or the top. The front will hit the power supply shroud, and on the top you'll hit the top of your motherboard. On the front you can do a 280-240 push-pull setup. On top, again, you'll still hit the top of your motherboard, so push-pull is not going to work. Behind the motherboard tray is space for 3 SSDs and a cutout for the CPU cooler. The cutout's weirdly off-center from where it actually needs to be. To access and actually mount a CPU cooler after you've mounted your motherboard isn't going to work. You're going to have to mount your CPU cooler before you actually install your motherboard. In front of the power supply compartment are 2 toolless trays for 3.5-inch drives. The mechanism clicks to lock the drives in and is really secure. The sleds can also take 2.5-inch drives via screws as well. I can only really imagine the only reason to put 2.5-inch drives in the trays is if you had an SSD server that you just dismantled and had a plethora of SSDs lying around. Cable routing isn't terribly hard, but it does take some planning. Behind the motherboard tray is incredibly tight, so routing cables like the 24-pin right behind and right over the SSD trays, not going to work. Instead, you're going to want to route really large cables like that around the 3.5-inch drive sled and up behind the removable plastic shroud that's towards the front of the case to the main compartment. In the power supply shroud, there's also a large rubber grommet hole that you can use to get cables up to the motherboard and to your GPU. The filters on the front and top intakes are both magnetic, but they're not really fine enough in my opinion. There's also a filter on the power supply which is fine enough to actually block dust and is attached to a pull-out sled. I really wish that at least the front filter was this fine. The top filter doesn't sit flush with a fan or radiator installed unless you use really flush mount screws, and even then it still peaks up a little bit, so just so you're aware. So let's talk about the most dreaded spec numbers, the price. The Cullinan has an MSRP of $180 and a street price of $150. At the street price, this case shares a lot of features of other cases at this price point and a little higher, such as like the 780T from Corsair, the Master case from Cooler Master, the In-Through Evolve ATX, and a lot of other flagship full-size cases. So real quick, I want to address the elephant in the room. I reached out to Rosewill to ask about this case and its striking similarities to the Entities crystal case. Their response was that they're not acting as distributor for Entities and Entities isn't their manufacturer. They did mention that there were some features added that made the Cullinan case even better, including rubber grommets in the tempered glass, the toolless hard drive trays, and the LED fans. I think the last one may be a bit of a stretch, but hey, some people like blue LEDs over white. From just about every angle, the Cullinan is a sleek case with a very minimal aesthetic. The features and the space inside this case will allow for some really impressive builds, much more impressive than what I did for this video. The price is a bit of a sticking point for me, and I think it's justified for the case, but I know it's still a lot more than some people would really spend, so this is definitely an enthusiast grade case. The official rating I'm giving the Rosewill Cullinan is a purchase. If you like this case and you can swing the price, get it. But if the price is a bit rich for your blood, just remember Black Friday. Actually, I really like this case and I actually may end up using it for my daily. Thanks for watching this review. If you found it useful or enjoyed it, then I appreciate a click on the like and on the subscribe button for more videos like this. And until next time, stay classy.